Art is special only because it can be carried to a higher degree that incorporates not only rational solution consideration, but the spiritual, the aesthetic. It is ideal because it can touch the spiritual, a higher level. As a matter of fact, I cannot distinguish between spiritual experience and aesthetic experience. They're just two terms, this time for the same experience. But one was associated with the church, the other one was... But I tend to stick with the broader terms. It does not make me less religious to say the spiritual experience. That sometimes we just live to say aesthetic. What the heck is aesthetic? Study of beauty. We get too technical.
How did Arlene Helgeson find you?
She came to McAllister. I was the chair of the art department at the time. Arlene came down there and she saw something in exhibition of welded sculpture, and she bought it for the campus, university campus there. The cathedral was the name of it. I think it's still there because they own it.
Right.
Okay. And then when they got an idea, they wanted the sculpture for the mall. At the time, I wasn't interested because my wife had died. I was mourning, and I really didn't care. My friends could say, "Oh, that's perfect for you, because you like stone, Then not many people do stone." And finally, very reluctantly, I met Arlene. She interviewed me. She in a committee got all excited, So I started right away. We took her right on the country. I said, "See that rock out there? I want that." They one got it for me. And that's the one we call the jewel stone, part of the trio. So that one I picked up with driving on the road. Then we went to quarry. I said, "I don't want all these things that are quarried. It's going to be more expensive because I have to remove all that." Let's look around. Look at all the things. Rocks are actually shaped by glaciers that have been pushed aside. These are beautiful shapes. Then I met a committee of, about 30 in the committee. And I said, "Well, you saw I was having an exhibition at the St. Paul Arts Center. And they had seen that exhibition. It was a traveling exhibition. So, well, you know what I can do? There's two ways going about it. If you want me to make a model for it, I can do that. It'll be more expensive, more time consuming, and not necessarily better. Why? Because once I make a model, then I'll have to make material to meet these requirements. But if I start with the material, like you got a lot of rocks, and you base the idea on this material available, like building a home, you decide what material is available, then you design it. That will be more direct, more natural, and you already know what to expect from me. You saw my exhibition. They trusted me to make something without a model. So when the quarry, start carving right away, and that's when they start taking pictures. And I didn't want to be distracted then because I was in a very sober mood, having lost my wife, and I had 4 children, teenagers in early 20s, a very difficult time for me. So everything up there was done directly.
How long did it take you to actually do the trio?
Mostly one summer. But I worked the sunrise and sunset, and then when we moved in the mall, I had them put up lights so I could work during the night as well. I had lots of energy. Besides, I had to prove myself that the death of my wife was not really... I wanted to see what effect it had on me. And I wanted to prove myself what I could do. I wasn't working for anyone. I was working for myself. It was a challenge I was accepting for myself. Any one of those pieces worth more than what they were giving for the whole thing. It didn't matter to me.
Yeah.
It was something I wanted to do, and they were very cooperative. As a matter of fact, the enthusiasm they showed as a community I talk about it quite often. As soon as I get through, instead of chasing me out of town, they honored me with Tony Caponi Day. And at first, oh no, that's too much. You already honored me enough, the Humphrey over there to unveiling and all that. But then I decide I gotta accept in behalf of other artists because they're honoring art, not just me. It's an example of a civic participation of a community. It was beautiful. Whatever I needed, somebody had it. They made available. The municipal people just provided the heavy equipment, anything I wanted to. Yeah. So it was a good experience. And they were all happy. Actually, the key point about that is when people see something being made, they mentally participate. It becomes theirs. Some become participants. They became very protective because the thing could have been vandalized so many times. They could. Very respectful, very protective of it. Okay, so the whole thing was a good experience. Then, what was it? A year, 2 years later, they had a Tony Caponi week. Mm-hmm. I had a good experience at St. Cloud because they were pretty select people. They responded with enthusiasm to these things that were fairly abstract, actually. Okay, and I never got over it. But I'm referring to the politician in St. Cloud. We're very enthusiastic. Right. The officials.
The officials.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's not necessarily the case in most places.
I went to the quarry. It took me about 2 hours to select rocks, boulders that were on the peripheral of the quarry. So what is quarried, it's usually, the stratification is rather angular, squarish. Now I did not want that, because had I started with a square block, I would have made a round anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started with the rather roundish boulders that were being discarded, pushed away from the quarry. Those boulders don't even belong to the quarry. I'm sure they were rolled by the glaciers. Where from, I don't know. But they must have traveled away before they got there. Now, most materials want to be carved a certain way. They wear out a certain way. There are a soft spot, there is a strata to it, and somehow when you roll a huge rock, even at tons and tons of it, it takes on a shape that is most natural to it, because any weak spots are immediately eroded, worn away. Now, upon observing this natural way of causes and effects, the way a rock, by merely tumbling, acquires a certain shape, this is absorbed by the sculptor, by me in this case. So now I come to understand how it wants to be carved. It does not mean I will necessarily use the shape that I see, but somehow recall how the stone behaves under abrasion. And without even giving it further thought, I get it in rhythm with this way of shaping a boulder. Now there are some very, very definite suggestions by the existing rock. It would not be natural not to respond to the rock, because it is beautiful in its natural state. And it's not just to make a sculpture, it's not a matter of showing off what the carver can do to it, or how it can make it do some arbitrarily, make it take some arbitrary shape. I do not take that approach. If I see something that is beautifully shaped, I will utilize. And if I carve into it, no matter how many tons of stone I remove, it will still look as if it always want to be that shape, or as no one wounded it. It's still healthy. It should look to me as if when I'm through with it, what's missing, the rock never wanted in the first place. I think had I done this when I was much younger, I would have wanted to show what I can do with tools. I would have shown off. I would have done very intricate carving. But at this stage of my life, I'm contented to use what's already there and add to it what it seems to agree with. Because I initiate it. I project, let's say, a concept. But as it feeds back, the stone itself can reject it. You see, how should I say, it looks almost like an ecosystem. I project an idea into it, and it will throw it back at me as if yes or no, maybe, not so hot, very good. You see. So that it isn't that the stone tells me what to do, but it will have to accept what I will. Otherwise, if it somehow resists that, it seems less, well, I'm animating the stone. Of course, it's myself echoing back to me, but somehow my feeling project into the rock, come back to me with the rockiness that it didn't have first. And it's just like someone playing at the piano. You listen to the sound, and if you respond right, you write it down, you jot it down, and you compose the way. But somehow you have to hear it. So my idea is, I cannot look away from the rock and think independently, because it doesn't work. Everything I do openly with it, and It is thrown back at me with variations, and usually much more improved, because it will have another dimension. It isn't just a vague idea. An artist of any kind can start with an idea and look for a material or a medium to express it. Or you may start with material and formulate a concept from the material. Often our communities are reluctant to do it that way because you are at the mercy of the artist. You'll have to trust someone very much to say, go to it, improvise. But if you get a group that can agree to that, the chances are you get better work that way. Because if not there, in the privacy of my own studio, just in a little room, I'll have to improvise sometimes anyway. There's no other way of creating except improvise till you find something that falls in harmony with all the elements that you plan to use. Because we had no model to go by, it is extremely difficult to use help. How can I tell them what to do if I'm trying to find out myself what I should do from minute to minute or from second to second? I have to feel my way. And I couldn't even tell myself what to do. I had to do and get in rhythm with what I was doing to see which way I really wanted to go. If I were to think it out and then tell somebody else to do it for me, it already would have been second-handed. Because even if I tell myself, when I actually do, it would not be exactly the same way, because the act of carving modifies the concept. As a matter of fact, I should say this way, the act of carving modifies an idea. That is, at this point, an idea, when it interacts with the act of carving, that makes it a concept. It becomes a concept. You can only have a vague idea, but this idea isn't grounded enough. It doesn't have the consent of the material, of the tools. But when you apply it, it revises itself. I don't mean that you change your mind, but it grows. It acquires other dimensions. So you aim approximately, but when you're there, you take much more definite direction. I may as well be carving with my bare hands, because my experience has been that with hand tools, a lot of hand tools before I changed into pneumatics. Once you make contact, and when I say direct contact, because I do not like to wear gloves even on granite, once you think close to it, when my thoughts is right at the tip of the chisel. My hand moves, I see it, feel it hitting the head of the chisel, but my soul is right at the tip of the chisel. I might as well be there with my own fingertips carving it out. So it doesn't matter what I do it with, because I feel with the process with the impact on just the clash between the steel and granite, the way it carves in, that's what I feel. So that I don't feel any more distant from it, regardless which tool I use. You reach a point where you're finishing very delicately, and you pat it, and you pat it, and finally you just get able to pull away with it. You leave it, it's content. But there's a point when you're, it's almost sadistic too, because you cut into it. You're doing some harm, and you're trying to resist sentiment. You cannot, as I said before, I love this rock. I would not work it if I didn't. But at a certain point, I know that I have to do it harm. I'll have to cut into it. I know that it feels, but the fact that it feels is reassuring, because I know that at the end I will heal it. I'll go back to it. Um, it promises well when I feel hurt with it when I'm carving, because that means I'm really feeling with it. Then when I made this contact, and this rock has been somewhat wounded by me, then the finishing it is a process of making it well, and it responds. Then is a real contact, a real rapport, because as I work it, it feels better. It's restored to health. Then when it's healthy, then it's a more positive attitude. Then I really enjoy caressing it with an abrasive tool or a carborundum, which I rub it by hand, in the motion of caressing it, because it's not something like back and forth mechanically. Actually, even as I polish it in the motion, in the same motion in which I would caress the piece. Somehow the shape is the result in a manner in which I have caressed, and with the tool I do that. Even though with the tool, again, it is something that where you cannot distinguish between pain and pleasure. I both hurt and please it, because I said, I know I gotta do this to you, but at the same time I know that I'm doing some harm to the original integrity of the rock itself. So that the end product will be very deliberate, as if it were done in one breath, without any hesitation. But there are times when you have to sit back, reassess what you've done. Because what you do is based not only on some concept that becomes more and more clear as you work, but the existence of what you already have done, the existing shape, give you more strength to the next step, so that it gains strength as you go on and on and on, strength that you cannot possibly have at the beginning.
So when you're faced with a mountain, you think big.